Welcome to Of the People with Robert Chernin and Ericka Redic. If you're looking for Robert tonight, you might be a little disappointed. Let's see if we can have some fun in spite of him not being here. Welcome, Ericka.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay, the Republican. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You know how much I love your playfulness, your wit. I want to be like you when I grow up, Jay.
Well, you know, people say that I spend about half my time trying to be witty, that I'm a half-wit. So we'll try not to be a nitwit as well. So we'll get started. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what everyone's talking about today. The Iowa caucuses, the first time we've actually voted. So we've had a lot of polls, and the only polls that really count are the ones on election day. And the interesting thing about Iowa is election day was actually just one day. So we've got other places. You know, I'm in Vermont.
Oh, you mean
45 days?
Where where it's like they're still counting votes 2 months later.
Yes. So what they do is they allow you to vote for the first 60 days before the election, and if you need extra votes, then they'll count for 2 or 3 days after that. So it's kind of interesting to watch the whole process and how well Iowa did it. But
let them be an example.
Well, one of the reasons that Iowa did it well, Ericka, is that the Iowa caucuses are run by the state party and not by the state government.
Oh, okay.
So the chairman out there is a guy named Jeff Kaufman. He's been around for a while. He was a legislator for a while. He actually, his son is a legislator now. And he is the one in charge of running the caucuses. And if you watched any of it last night, you saw something very unique. People actually vote on a paper ballot. They're put in a bucket, and they count them in front of everyone. One by one, they take them out. They announce the name, Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and they put them in piles with everyone watching. They allow them to look at the ballots. They all count them multiple times to make sure the numbers are correct. So it's a whole different world.
Okay, so how come the rest of the states can't do that?
The rest of the states choose not to. You're going to find out that Nevada is a caucus state, so they've had some challenges in the past. But to give you an idea, the Democrats used to have caucuses in Iowa, but they realized they screwed it up. They couldn't count. They couldn't put things in piles. They couldn't agree with each other.
Wasn't that the last? So I'm sorry, Jay. Wasn't that like the 2020 election? It was a whole debacle, and everybody was laughing at them.
Yeah, but you know, one of the things we have to understand, you can't blame them on the caucus, is that the Democrats have a hard time with numbers. I mean, I think we've seen what this president has done with, you know, inflation, saying, well, there's no inflation, gas prices are down. Well, they're down because he raised them so high that you raise something, you double something and you take it down 10%. That is not the right way things happen. So we've got Democrats that can't count, and we've got Republicans that count in the open and get the job done. Within 3 hours, we knew what the results were.
That's wild, Jay.
It is. And the nice thing is what we found out is the polls weren't too far off. You know,
that's what I thought was really interesting, because leading up to it, people were saying, oh, well, you don't really know. The polls are bad and everybody lies to the pollsters. But it actually wound up a lot like what we're seeing.
There was some question. The latest polls on Real Clear Politics showed Trump around a little less than 50% of the vote. It showed Nikki Haley in second, and it showed Ron DeSantis in third. In effect, Trump overachieved by 2 or 3 percentage points. Ron DeSantis actually overachieved, beat the polls by 5 or 6 points. And Nikki Haley was right about where she was in the polls. And Vivek Ramaswamy did his usual thing and realized a little bit after the rest of us realized that there was no future going forward. So it took him a little bit longer than it took the rest of us to know that he wasn't a serious contender. But what I want to talk about a little bit is the 3 people that did well. Trump, DeSantis, and Haley. And all 3 of them said the same thing. Well, 2 of the 3 said the same thing. Donald Trump said, it's done. Iowa decided I'm the nominee, but Ron DeSantis, the governor, and Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, both said we punched our tickets to New Hampshire. What we've seen in the past is that the top 2 or 3 people get to go to New Hampshire where real changes happen. So what they're saying is that New Hampshire is going to make a difference. One of the things Nikki Haley said was, Iowa's probably going to get it wrong, and New Hampshire will correct it. So that's the reason tonight on our show, we have the Republican National Committeeman for New Hampshire. He knows New Hampshire politics, has been around forever. We're talking about William O'Brien, Bill O'Brien, former Speaker of the House in New Hampshire, businessman, owns a high-tech cybersecurity firm, attorney. Ooh. We won't hold that part against them because he's been so successful. Here to talk to us about what happened in Iowa and how that will affect what's going forward in New Hampshire, what he sees as a difference, what he sees on the ground. Welcome, Bill. Appreciate you coming on the show tonight. And tell us a little bit
Jay,
last night.
I appreciate you having me on. I have to tell you, I did notice you would call Jay the Republican. Is that because they're having trouble finding a second one in Vermont?
Yes, he is the only Republican in the entire state.
We probably stole them all and brought them to New Hampshire. I know we did that to Massachusetts.
Yes, but you also took in some liberals from Massachusetts. So just make sure you have a door and a gate on the border so you don't bring in any liberals. At least we have a chance in New Hampshire of some Republican representation.
We're doing pretty well. We have a Republican governor, Republican House, Republican Senate. We have something called an executive council that approves appointments, among other things, approves budgetary items being spent, appropriations. And they're 4 out of 5 are Republicans. So we have a presence here. And as a matter of fact, it looks like the only contested primary we have in New Hampshire this year is truly the Republican primary. On the Democrat side, they tried to take the primary away from New Hampshire, not understanding that it is in law that we have to have the First Nation primary. So we're going ahead with it. The Democrat Party here is very critical of its national party. There's a lot of rhetoric going back and forth, and we as Republicans are just enjoying the heck out of it.
So, Bill, do you think Dean Phillips is going to make his mark in New Hampshire and that he's going to become the nominee of the National Party?
He'll make his mark in New Hampshire, but that won't make him the nominee of his party. They're not allowing him, for example, to get on the ballot. I think it's in Illinois and Florida, one other big state. They just want, that's the way the Democrats play the game. If there's a chance you might win an election and you're not the one they want to win the election, you don't get on the ballot. So what we see happening with President Trump in some of these states, it was being brought to light nationally that they do this, and within their own party they do it to each other as well. But, Jay, I think that what happened in Iowa is just as you said. It indicates that at very best, there's 3 candidates that are the top tier candidates. Really, there's a top tier candidate and then the other 2. And I think what's going to happen here in New Hampshire with those 3 candidates coming out of Iowa, that it well could be the last primary that Governor DeSantis has this cycle. His showing in the polls here are really in single digits. And I don't know how we can come out of here and then go to Nikki Haley's state, which it seems that President Trump is going to win, and then go on from there. I'd be very surprised. And so too, Nikki Haley, she'll do better here than she did in Iowa. Some polls show her within 2 or 3 percentage point reach of President Trump. Those are outlier polls. I think there's probably anywhere between a 10 and 15% gap. She'll lose the primary here, and then what will be devastating to her campaign is losing her own state.
Tell me a little bit about where, the latest poll I saw, they were very close at the top between Haley and President Trump, former President Trump. But then there was still some polling showing Chris Christie with 11% and Vivek at about 8%. So there's like 15 to 20% that were polling for people who are no longer in the race. So the question for you is, do you see any movement on the ground that those people will be moving one way or the other? Do the Christie people go to DeSantis? Do the Ramaswamy people go to Trump? Where are these folks going to go, in your opinion?
That's a really good question.
Well, the latest polls aren't showing numbers for at least Chris Christie and some of the others who have already dropped out, Pence and so forth. I think a lot of their vote, the ones who have left, went to Nikki Haley. Vivek Ramaswamy's vote, according to polls, and I think this is what I see on the ground, a good percentage of it, I'm talking, somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4, will go to President Trump. I think a lot of people listened to Vivek and liked him because he sounded a lot like President Trump, and was willing to confront the elite and the establishment. So I think President Trump will pick up his vote. I know that the American Research Group has shown that 2 percentage point gap between President Trump and Ambassador Haley. They're an outlier poll. As a matter of fact, if you look at Real Clear Politics and their review of what are reliable polls, they have some of the highest error rates of any poll. Their error rate has typically been about 8%. Now, you could say if you were Chris Christie, for example, you could say, well, no, the 8% is going to go against President Trump. I don't think so. I think what's going to happen is that President Trump's gap will be much larger. And then it shows here, I've gone to, we all talk about this. I've gone to his some of his rallies here, and I have to be careful. I'm officially neutral under our local party rules. The leadership of our party, the National Committeeman, National Committeewoman, party chair, we have to remain neutral until the primary is over. So I go to all of them, but I've noticed just a degree of enthusiasm, which is just legendary, except in comparison to his own rallies for President Trump. They're just astounding.
I think that word enthusiasm is going to be so important this year, because I don't know that anybody is enthusiastic to go vote for Joe Biden. But I don't remember who I was listening to today, but they said Trump voters will crawl over broken glass to vote for Donald Trump. And I said, I think that's a pretty accurate description. So do you think that that'll affect us? Do you think that'll affect elections this fall? That enthusiasm gap?
Oh, I think so. I think what he's doing is expanding his base, or they're expanding it for him. I chaired Ted Cruz's campaign in New Hampshire in 2016, and I just marveled as I looked at the Trump campaign developing, how dedicated some of the people were. But they weren't really angry. They're just saying, here, finally, somebody's articulating what concerns us. This person seems to know us. This person seems to care for us. The group of folks that Hillary Clinton called deplorables were really dedicated to Trump. I think what's happened this time is those deplorables, as described by Hillary Clinton, are still there. But there's a lot of folks who are really angry with the way that Trump has been treated and Republicans are being treated. And we reach back and begin to see a pattern, that's just been the case for so long. Was it Senator Stevens of Alaska, I think, that they indicted in order to get rid of a Republican senator, to get a U.S. senator to get Obamacare through. And later on, his conviction was not only overturned, but it was shown that they withheld crucial evidence. Basically, it was one of these payback schemes where the contractor supposedly gave him favorable prices, and the contractor came in and talked to the FBI and said, no. As a matter of fact, I charged him a little bit more because he was like a rich Republican. So they withheld that. They withheld that from him.
So, Bill, are you implying that the Democrats and the liberals might do things indicting people who are not guilty of crimes in order to win elections?
Jay, you and I both remember the absurdity of the indictment against Governor Perry in Texas. I mean, the absurdity there was he threatened to veto a bill, and so they indicted him for making threats.
Yeah. I was actually Rick Perry's Vermont campaign manager years ago.
Right. I liked him a lot. He was a great guy.
I think he's a great guy. Tell us a little bit now. In Iowa, we watch people count the votes. We watch the Republican Party that you had to show ID. You had to show that you're a registered Republican. It's a little bit different in New Hampshire, isn't it? So you're a little bit more of an open primary state. So tell us a little bit about how your primary works.
So we actually have, and this is a confusion even locally, we have closed primaries. You have to be a Republican to vote in a Republican primary. Where it doesn't seem that way and effectively isn't that way is our law that allows unaffiliated voters to come in and register on election day or primary day. So you can be unaffiliated, show up at the voting place and say, I want to pull a Republican ballot. And by doing that, you are a registered Republican. And then when you cast your ballot, you can walk 2 tables over to the supervisors of the checklist who keep the rolls and say, I'm finished with being a Republican. And then there's some, I won't bore you with all the historical details as to how that came about. It wasn't intended. It was just, the supervisors, for example, came in and said, why should we hold another meeting a few days later? The supervisors to change back registrations were there anyway. And, kind legislators said, oh, okay, well, why don't you do it there? And the reason for same-day registration is actually Judge Gregg, a former senator, pulled that off for us because otherwise we would have been subject to the motor voter law. And he convinced Congress that if we have same-day registration, that's a reasonable substitute.
Yeah, just one thing before we have to go. I have tickets for 2 debates in New Hampshire, one for Thursday night and one for Saturday night. And I heard today that Nikki Haley has said she will not debate anyone but Trump or Biden, and that she is not going to show up for the debate with Ron DeSantis. Do you have any insight or any knowledge on that statement? That
my advice to you is quickly scalp those tickets for Thursday night because their value is falling fast, my friend.
All right,
really fast.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Bill, for coming on tonight, and I also want to congratulate you. This past Saturday, you were reelected for another 4-year term to the Republican National Committee. I haven't known you that long, but I know what you're doing with the Pine Tree Public Policy Institute and your Wednesday meetings. And I congratulate you again, and thank you so much for being on the show. And sorry you didn't actually were able to come on when there was a real host, but Ericka will have to do for now.
Yeah, you're real enough for me because I'm not sure I'm a real national committeeman yet. So. it worked out just fine.
All right, well, sounds good.
Thanks, Ericka. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
So, Ericka, can you take us to a break since I don't know how to do this?
Yeah, you got it. Hang on with us, guys. When we come back, we're going to have Dr. Robin Armstrong with us. He is the National Committeeman for Texas, and he also has had some interesting experiences fighting back against the government overreach we've been dealing with the last couple of years. So I'm really excited to hear his story. Hang on for 2 minutes, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, I'm Robert Chernin.
And I'm Ericka Redic.
And we are Of the People. Join us on WUVR 1490 on your AM dial. That's Thursdays 9 a.m., Saturdays 3 p.m., and
WNTK 99.7 FM.
And if you can't find either of those, you can find us on Rumble.
That's right.
Listen in.
Oh.
Socialism. The goal of socialism is communism. The world is quite familiar with socialism and the horrors socialism has brought with it. It wasn't that long ago. Actually, it's still with us. Socialism creeps into government slowly until it's too late. Socialism, the big lie. Yes, it could happen anywhere. This educational video was brought to you by the American Center for Education and Knowledge and paid for by people like you who care about the future of our democracy. Please help us continue our work educating the American public and consider supporting ASIC by making a tax-deductible donation at asicfund.org.
All right. Jay, I didn't know Bill was going to be so funny.
Bill is a great guy. Excitement, energy. If you have a chance and you're in New Hampshire, they do Wednesday meetings. And it would be great if you had a chance to stop by and hear the conservative viewpoints. It's center-right meeting, and they do a fantastic job over there. I just want to comment a little bit on that socialism video that we just saw. So very strong. And if you do get a chance to go to asicfund.com and donate, it really helps us get our message across. Robert Chernin, Ericka, Redic, they have a lot to say on a regular basis. They're on every week on Tuesdays. So if you can donate, please go to the website and make a difference.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna put that website right in the chat for everybody to go check out.
that would be great. So I think we have Dr. Robert Armstrong waiting.
We do. Do you want to give him an introduction before we pull him in, or you want me to just pull him right in?
Pull him in. I want to give an introduction
Let's
while
do
he's
it.
here.
Oh, we can see him blush.
Should I turn the lighting on a little bit, or does it look right here?
A little bit more light would be helpful, I think. I mean, it's nice mood lighting. I'm not going to lie, for our podcast listeners and our radio show listeners.
Well, there we go.
Dr. Armstrong was looking very, very slick on the camera there for us.
Very
I
dapper,
like it.
very good looking, which is totally unfair for him to be so good looking when he's so smart as well. So I've known Dr. Robin Armstrong for a while now. I think maybe 10 or 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've become a big fan, obviously. And Robin Armstrong has been on OAN regularly. He's been on Newsmax as a regular. He's been on Fox News. He's been regular at the White House advising President Trump and making a difference in this country. He's a county commissioner in Texas. He's the national committeeman in Texas. He is head of the faith advisory temporary committee on faith advisory for the RNC. He's done it all. He's been everywhere. And here he is finally coming on, I'm guessing, his dream show. And I just hope he's not disappointed because the regular host is not here. And, you know, I'm sure you've waited your whole life to be on Of the People with Robert Chernin, and you end up getting Jay. But thankfully, Ericka's here to support me.
Well, I'm excited to be on. And I'll tell you, Jay, in any show that you're leading, man, I'm doubly excited to be on. I haven't met Ericka yet, so I'm sure Ericka's going to be fantastic. And so I'm excited to be on. Thank you for having me.
Well,
If
Ericka,
Jay likes me, then I'm good. I figure because Jay doesn't like anybody. So if Jay likes you, you know that you are actually a good person. That's at least that's what I tell myself.
yes. I mean, you know, Dr. Armstrong is a man of faith. And I don't know if I should say this or not, but I always wanted to have a bumper sticker on my car. This is Jesus loves you, but I don't. So I'm still working on being a good Christian. And Dr. Armstrong is kind of helping me through all of that. And one of the reasons I wanted you to come on, Robin, is in a couple of weeks, you are holding a national summit, a faith summit in Las Vegas, as co-chair and chair of the RNC's Faith Advisory Board.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about what you have planned, and more so, why do you think it's important for people of faith to be part of the RNC and part of the Republican Party?
Boy, I'll tell you, it is. I think it's vital. I believe that when people of faith are not involved and engaged in the process, then the process devolves. It gets worse. You know, when we look at any of our institutions, our institutions of higher learning or secondary education, we look at politics, whatever it is. When people of faith are not involved and engaged in it, then that process just devolves and gets worse. And and that vacuum is filled by people who do not believe in our values, and they're filled by the vacuum is filled by people who do not believe and who are basically, destroy the thing that they're involved in, whatever it is. And so I think it's vital that we bring people of faith into the Republican National Committee, that we bring people of faith into politics, that we have people engaged. Where I live in Texas, Harris County is just to the north of us, and that's where Houston is. And Houston's is a very large Democrat city, and it's got about 4 million people. And so Harris County, actually, we have 100,000. It's estimated that 100,000 people of faith, evangelicals, did not register to vote in the last election cycle. And that is extraordinary. If we got half of those to register, 50,000, and we got half of those to vote, we would win everything in Harris County. Right now, Harris County is a completely Democrat county, and it doesn't have to be. And I believe that that's probably the case in counties, states all over the country where we have people of faith who are just not engaged in the process. Our goal with this summit is to get people engaged. We hope to do this all over the country, but we're going to start it in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is where our Republican National Committee meeting is going to be held. Our meeting is going to be on January the 30th. It's going to be from 4 to 9 p.m. And our hope and our prayer is that we can get pastors from those surrounding states, Colorado, Nevada, certainly Nevada, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, all those surrounding states. We can get people of faith, pastors, priests, people who believe the way that we do, to come in and get educated on the political process, educated that they don't have to worry about their 501c3 status, educated that they should be involved and be at the lead of these cultural battles that are taking place in our nation right now. Because when people of faith are not leading the cultural fight, then we lose the cultural fight. And so we've got to have folks that are out there and engaged. And our goal is to engage them, to interact with them, to put them in an environment where they can be comfortable, and also to have them come into the Republican National Committee and have an influence on that body as well. I mean, we want them engaged there so that they can come in and have their voices heard at the RNC level. And so we're real excited. We've got some great national speakers coming in. Certainly Jay is going to participate on one of our panels about how to take back our culture. And so we're really excited. We've got some Ralph Reed's going to come in. David Barton's going to come in. We've got Harmeet Dillon that's going to do a legal briefing for us. And so we're real excited about the leaders that we have coming in. And I think we're going to start something. This could be the start of something really big. So I'm excited.
Well, I think that's absolutely great, Robin. And the impact that you're having on the RNC and being the faith leader that you are really shows in what you're doing in Las Vegas. But one of the things I think that's important is that we want to show that we are not trying to change people. What we're trying to do is bring people into the party to become active, to really talk about their values. We know that there's a tremendous number of Americans out there that have the same values and the beliefs and the commitment to this country that we have. So what you're doing, I have to really applaud by bringing in these pastors who can speak the message, talk about faith, talk about unity, talk about what makes America great, are the same principles that we're learning by reading the Bible. The biblical principles are out there that just have to be transferred into the public sphere. Absolutely. And so I think that's really well. And I think some of the speakers that you have coming in really understand that they're God first, and country second, and party third. But all three of those go together when you are a person of faith. So that is tremendous. So Ericka is from Texas, so maybe you can help her in her county as well. Volunteer to do some work in Texas.
You know me, I am constantly trying to understand why it is that Christians particularly cede ground all over the place. They're like, we're going to stay out of it. I don't want to be involved in politics. And it's like, well, but then you don't really get to be surprised when they do crazy stuff like remove personhood status of the unborn. Like, don't you think it's important to fight for your values?
Right. Absolutely. I believe that it is an amazing thing to me that someone who is a believer and someone who reads the Bible could believe that God would want them to completely not be involved in the political process, in any civic process that goes on in this country, because when we leave that process, it's been shown over many. I have a great pastor who talks about how when he was a young boy, he's in his 60s now, when he was a young boy, how everyone talked about how when television came out, how television was evil. And a lot of the Christian people just abandoned that medium of communication, when actually that could have been the way that God was going to use, or Jesus was going to use to reach the world, and so but it was just abandoned. It was turned over to the left. I mean, we look at our arts, we look at our institutions of higher learning. Harvard and Yale and Princeton. These were all institutions that were started by strong people of faith, and now over time we have ceded that over to the left. The fact that we even talk about abortion at late stage abortion, the fact that we even talk about women or men participating in women's sports, that says that in a lot of ways we're losing the cultural war. And the left is advancing forward, and we're continuing to retreat. Well, I hope that we can send a message that Christians can no longer retreat. We have to engage the cultural wars. And if we do not engage those wars, then we're going to lose a lot more than an election. We're going to lose the soul of this nation, and which is far more important. And so I'm excited to work with you and to work with folks like Jay and leadership. I'm excited to be able to sort of play a small part in trying to push back. And I think it's just a start. I really do.
Yeah. I want to go back about the television thing. A lot of people don't realize that in the 50s, Bishop Sheen had his own television show on the network. It was the #1 rated show on television in the 50s. It was a Catholic bishop coming on, talking about biblical principles, reading scripture, and explaining to people how their active life as a Christian needs to be part of the national conversation.
Wow.
He didn't do it in a way of demeaning or in preaching, but in understanding and bringing people to the fore. And we need more of that.
Wow, what a trailblazer he was. Wow, he saw, he saw something that a lot of evangelicals did not see at that time. A lot of evangelicals retreated from that medium entirely, and so God bless him. I wish that we all, as a community, as a Christian community as a whole, would have followed that example, because it'd be amazing where we'd be today had we followed that example.
Absolutely. One of the things I wanted to also discuss with you is that you have been doing monthly prayer calls, and open to every Republican in the country, and even more so open to some Democrats that maybe they can, feel the faith and be moved to start doing the right thing. And I believe that you've had some tremendous guests on. I think you had Speaker of the House Mike Johnson on, Senator Josh Hawley. Tell us a little bit, and maybe our producer can put in the chat room here and on the screen how they can come and find out more about what you're doing with the faith.
Absolutely. So we have a landing page, faithengagement24.com, faithengagement24.com. And right now that's used to register for our event that we're doing in Nevada, in Las Vegas. But if you register there, we also would get you signed up on our prayer call as well, and get you engaged in that. We have had some great prayer calls. We've had Senator Ted Cruz lead one of our prayer calls. Senator Josh Hawley led a prayer call for us. We had Speaker Mike Johnson recently lead a prayer call. And so we were really excited to have these speakers. Chuck Grassley came in and led one of our calls as well. Bob McEwen from the Council for National Policy came in. And so we've had these great national speakers. And one thing we want to do with these prayer calls is just encourage people that look, we have leaders who are not bowing the knee to Baal. We have leaders who are not compromised, and we have.
Ooh. Did we lose Dr. Armstrong?
Oh, sorry, Dr. Armstrong. We froze there for just a second. Can you repeat that last thing you just said?
Oh, I was saying the reason we're having these prayer calls is just so that we can encourage people to know that we have national leaders who are praying people. And so these leaders will share a brief message, and then they'll pray for our nation. And so I've been so encouraged to have these United States senators and our speaker who came on our call this last week actually pray for our nation and believe God for revival in our nation. And so we would love to have people come onto these calls, because I think it's encouraging. And then also we'll keep you abreast of what's going on in the future. So we're excited about our prayer calls. We have messaging meetings as well. And Jay Shepard actually led one of our messaging calls on abortion and how we should be messaging that to people. And I know that people were really encouraged with that and got some ideas. I think he's got some other invitations to come and speak as a result of that. And so we're really, I think we're really trying to, we're not we don't have a large budget to work with. And so, well, the budget's zero. So we don't have a budget at all to work with. And so we're doing what we can to move the ball forward. And hopefully with some success, then we can see more funds being invested in these efforts. So that's what we're working for as well.
And I think it's important to note that a lot of us that are Republicans, we talk about the life issue, for instance, and we are not pro-life because we're Republicans. We're Republicans because we're pro-life. My entry into politics was strictly, started out with the life issue, making sure that we protect the lives of children everywhere. And so there's no room for someone like me who believes in the sanctity of life and that children are important and our seniors are important at the other end of life. There's no room for people like us, people of faith, in the Democrat Party. So we need to let people know that the Republican Party is the party of faith, and that we actually say God every once in a while. We'll have a convention and we do prayer. We do not have a meeting at an RNC, any RNC event where there's not an invocation, where we do not praise the Lord. And so there's so much going on that we really need to be involved in, and we're welcoming to all those of faith. And you could be a Democrat. You can come and join us and understand that we're not using our faith for politics. We're using politics for our faith. And there's a major distinction there. When you look at a President Biden, who continually talks about being a devout Catholic, he is using that for his political gain. We wanted to make sure that we use politics for the gain of the faith, and that we start embracing biblical principles that bring us all to a better place. One of the things about God and all of that is God doesn't look at us as an economic being. He doesn't look at us as a capitalist or a communist or a socialist. He looks at us as an individual with a soul that we need to save. And what we're trying to do within the party is to make sure we're saved, and that we understand that God made us, man did not make God. And what Dr. Armstrong is doing is just professing that and bringing in these leaders. I mean, some of these people that are going to be in Las Vegas, you need to hear them. We've touched base with some of them, but maybe, Robin, you can go a little bit before we have to go to break to talk a little bit about who's going to be there again and what that's going to look like.
Sure, absolutely. And so we're going to have Pastor Dave Welch, who is a pastor of the U.S. Pastors Council. He's here in Houston, Texas, and Dave was instrumental in in defeating an ordinance here in Houston. And like I say, Houston obviously is a very liberal city. And at the time, we had a homosexual mayor in Houston, and that mayor was trying to push an ordinance in the city of Houston that would restrict pastors from ministering about homosexuality or the family. And so this was actually an ordinance they were trying to pass. And Dave Welch was actually instrumental in organizing pastors, African-American pastors, Hispanic pastors, Anglo pastors, all pastors together to defeat that ordinance in Houston. So he's going to be speaking and telling some of the victories that he's had in the field. And he's had a lot of them. He's done this for like 40 years. We've also have Ralph Reed, who is the head of the Faith and Freedom Coalition. And Ralph Reed is a national speaker, worked very early on with Pat Robertson. And he's been a voice and a leader. He's a former national committeeman from Georgia, and he is leading the efforts. He has a great organization that is out there pushing our values, leading in our values. They're registered voters, and they have a great organization that works to engage pastors and believers all over the country. David Barton with Wall Builders, and David is probably one of the foremost authors, Christian authors, and Christian historians in the United States today. He was named in Time Magazine one of the top 25 influential Republicans in the country, and so he is very, very active and has a great message in our talking about our biblical values and how historically America is a country of believers. And how we have to continue to press that. Harmeet Dillon is a legal scholar, and she has some great cases that she's going to update us on that are relevant to cultural values. And so these are all national speakers who are speaking, many weeks out of the year, many months out of the year, all over the country, and we're just so honored to have them. I think it's a great lineup. We've got Jay Shepard on one of our panels. We've got our Chad Conley's going to lead one of our panels that Jay's going to be a part of. And on taking back our culture, we're going to have a panel discussion over that. And then we've got a panel discussion on election integrity that our co-chair, Drew McKissick, is actually going to lead. And so you're going to get to meet some RNC leadership while you're there. And we're also going to have some fantastic faith speakers that are going to be there as well. So we're very, very excited.
Robin, we have to go to a break, but would you stay on with us and maybe have a little bit of discussion on what's going on with the COVID scare that we're having right now? Rand Paul had some interesting comments about Dr. Fauci today. And if you could stay on with us for, the next segment, we'd appreciate that. We can go in that direction if you're good with that.
That sounds great.
Thank you. Ericka, take us away.
You got it.
America came into being based on a shared belief and a common set of values. Unlike other nations that were bound together based on common ancestry, race, or caste, we came into being based on a simple and shared set of ideals. That the power of government is based on the consent of the governed. That life, the freedom to live life on our own terms in our own way, free from government interference, and liberty, our most precious value, and the pursuit of happiness, which means we are free to pursue that which we choose with the knowledge and courage to know that nothing is guaranteed to us in this life. Those values, America was founded on these basic inalienable rights. Freedom to pray to God in our own way. Freedom to think and speak freely without fear of punishment or harm. And freedom to gather in our places of worship and in our local taverns. And freedom to defend ourselves, our families, our homes, and our neighbors as we see fit. The American Center for Education and Knowledge is dedicated to protecting American exceptionalism anywhere and everywhere it is threatened. ASIC is a 501c3 and depends on your tax-deductible donations. Please help us continue our fight.
I love that stuff. Everything you guys, we've already said it. Go to asicfund.org. Check it out. Check out the work we're doing. You know, one of the things that we're talking about in this conversation today is getting involved, participating, right? Dr. Armstrong, one of the themes that I hear you saying is people just need to do something. You know, it seems like for too long, people have just kind of like, you know, stayed in their shell or tried to stay out of things. But really what we need is for everybody to just do something.
Absolutely. We need people to get up, to wake up. I mean, we're certainly losing our country. And if, the evil men will lead when good men do nothing, men and women, of course. And so we have to stand up and be counted. We have to stand up and say, look, enough is enough. And I hope and pray that people are feeling that in this election cycle in 2024, that they just say enough is enough. We can't do this anymore. We have to go a different direction. And I hope that's a multicultural stance where people stand up of all races and say enough is enough. We can't do this anymore.
I love it.
Yes.
Now, Jay, you had something you wanted. Some juicy stuff we're going to be talking about in this last section.
Well, I don't know how juicy it is. I think I wanted to take this opportunity.
It's juicy enough that we can get community guideline strikes for it. That's why everybody.
Is that what we're worried about here?
Is everybody go to Rumble? Make sure you like, share, and subscribe on Rumble. In case we get kicked off of YouTube. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And one of the things we would like you to do, I mean, I would love for you to follow me on Twitter, follow Dr. Armstrong, follow Ericka, follow Robert Chernin, who is the real host of this show. I'm sure it'll be a long time before they invite me back, but I think me bringing on these two fantastic guests today kind of saves my life as far as the podcast goes.
You win, Jay.
What we would like to do, since we have the opportunity to have Dr. Armstrong here, who is actually a medical doctor, he is not related. He doesn't have the same degree that Dr. Jill Biden has. He actually went to medical school, as did his wife. And by the way, Dr. Robert Armstrong is married to Dr. Martha Armstrong, who, if you think Robin Armstrong is fantastic, his wife really overshadows him with accomplishments in style and looks and all of those kind of things. So if if Martha's listening, tell her we said hi and we miss her, and hopefully we'll see her in Las Vegas.
She'll be there. She'll be in Las Vegas, and you're absolutely correct. She overshadows me in many things.
Yeah, and she's not a big fan of hanging out with politicians and all those. She's a lot more real than the rest of us are. So my wife Eileen's the same way. So the more time they can spend with people of faith and all of that, they're happier than they are with some of the politicians that hang around. Just today, I think it was that Dr. Rand Paul made a comment that he believes that perhaps Dr. Fauci deserves prison for mishandling the COVID situation when we had the scare for 2 or 3 years. And I know, Robin, you were on the forefront of saving people's lives, the preventatives and the nursing homes that you were working in. Can you tell us a little bit about how you were involved in that battle and the lives that you were saving and how you were making a difference in the Houston area?
So we got national attention and was on the Laura Ingraham show and I tell people all the time that they did an article about me in Rolling Stone magazine, and I always tell people, tell my sons I'm a rock star, but they read the article and they said, oh, they didn't seem to like you very much at all. But what we did was we were actually the first nursing home in the United States to treat a large number of nursing home residents with hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. And so what was happening is, and we did this in March of 2020. So this was right as the pandemic was beginning here in the United States. We treated folks with that three drug combination very early on. It had not been done in the nursing home setting at all, and it was very successful. We actually had an outbreak in our nursing facility we had 86 residents that were infected with COVID, and we ended up treating. We triaged them. We treated them. We treated the ones we thought that had more serious disease, and we only lost one patient to COVID. Only one in that nursing facility.
Wow.
This was a
wow
story. I mean, and you know, we had the governor was aware of what was going on. He was calling me and asking me. The lieutenant governor was aware, and our plan was to put a paper out, an observational paper. Now, this is not a randomized double-blind study because it wasn't set up. We were just treating patients in the setting of a pandemic. We were going to put this out because this was so early on in the pandemic that this should have been the protocol that was used in every nursing home in the United States of America. But when the media got wind of what had happened, they actually attacked us. They attacked me personally. They went after my license. I was investigated by the Texas Medical Board. I was
So wait, I'm sorry, Dr. Armstrong. The Texas Medical Board?
The Texas Medical Board, yes. And so this is a great example of bureaucracy. Okay, and so what happens is the people that staff the medical board are the ones who do all of the investigations. And so what ended up happening at the end of the day was after the 9-month investigation, where I spent, my insurance put $45,000 in materials trying to defend me. I had to get a lawyer, obviously. And so after all of that, the medical board just dropped the case and they didn't do anything about it. But what happened is the people that are working, the staff for the medical board, the bureaucracy of the medical board, are all liberals. And so they investigated me. They charged me with all sorts of things that was just foolishness. And the medical board, when it finally got to a board hearing, and this was 9 months later, they just dropped the charges. They just dropped everything.
Well, let's put this a little bit in perspective. This is early on when nursing homes, people were dying by the dozens and by the hundreds in nursing homes all over this country. We know what was happening in New York when the governor there was basically allowing a death sentence to these people in nursing homes.
Mm-hmm.
And you were protecting lives better than any other nursing home that we're aware of in the country. And they go after you. Why would they go after you?
Especially Texas, where everybody thinks like Texas is supposed to be like the free state where, everybody's like conservative and whatever. Like,
I'll tell you, we certainly have our liberals here in the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy was attacking us. And so, Jay, that's a great question because I couldn't figure that out myself. I'm thinking, look, liberals have grandparents and great grandparents and they don't want them to die, I'm sure. And so why would they be in opposition to this? Well, I kind of figured out that I believe that had it gotten out early on in March of 2020, or very early on, that elderly people, the sickest people of the sick in nursing homes, can survive COVID with this medication combination. Had that gotten out, no one would have feared the disease. Number one. They needed people to fear this disease. I think that's why they attacked us, number one. Number two, the vaccine cannot be used under emergency use authorization if there are any medications that are shown to be effective in treating COVID-19.
Well, and these weren't.
And so if there was any evidence out that there were any medications that could potentially treat COVID-19, you could not use the vaccine under emergency use authorization. And so the vaccine would not have existed had our study got out, had people started using it widespread, had it been effective for people widespread, then the vaccine would have never come into existence. I believe those are the two reasons why we were attacked.
Not only is it a treatment, zithromycin, that's a Z-Pak, right? So that's like
correct.
Pretty standard antibiotic.
Absolutely.
Hydroxychloroquine is an inexpensive medication, antiviral, right? I think.
Over the counter in most of the world.
And then zinc is just over-the-counter zinc for your immune system. I mean, I don't know if that's what you were using, if it was like a high dose of zinc.
No, it was very, very normal. In fact, I took higher doses of hydroxychloroquine when I went on a missionary trip to Africa. And so I knew that it was safe. I knew it was safe. And so I knew these 3 drugs were safe. And that was my reasoning in using it, because I figured, we were using it in the hospital. And so, because I'm a hospital doctor primarily, we were using it in the hospital, and it was ineffective because we were using it too late. The people were already so ill that they were not, and that's why all the data looks bad on hydroxychloroquine, because all the studies that were done using hydroxychloroquine were done in patients who were on the ventilator. They were already heading towards death. And so what we learned is that you have to use it earlier. So we used it earlier. I knew these medications were safe. I knew at the very worst, we were going to do no harm. We were not going to hurt these patients in any way, because I knew these medicines were safe. But what did they do? They came out and they said hydroxychloroquine is unsafe. It causes cardiac problems, which is absolutely not true. And they basically lied. Lancet came out.
Wow.
It came out. The big Lancet study that came out, and it made national news. This was probably weeks after we did this in the nursing facility, because I believe that people were saying, wow, the evidence is coming out that this is working. We've got to come up with something else. So they had a big Lancet study. Lancet is one of the most respected journals in the world. Okay, they came out with a big study saying that hydroxychloroquine does not work and it kills people. This was the headline. And now 2 weeks later, so that was a headline all over the national news. 2 weeks later, they had to retract, the scientists retracted that study and said that the information that was gathered was fraudulent. It was wrong.
But no one reads the retraction. No one ever reads the retraction. They only ever see the first one.
We have doctors today that still refer to that Lancet study as a reason to not use hydroxychloroquine.
Come on.
They completely missed the retraction, which was on page 35, and the fact that the faulty study was on page 1. And so there was something very nefarious going on here. It was a horrible situation. I was, we were worried. I mean, we were praying and believing God and praying for our patients and praying that this message could get out. But I'll tell you, the mass media, they really attacked us mercilessly, and they did not let that message get out. And so people feared COVID, and that's why people were willing to take a vaccine that was really unproven, and they were willing to take a vaccine that could potentially be harmful to them.
One of the tough things about doing a show like this is it's a 1-hour radio show, and the podcast, we could go on forever, and I wish we could, but I think we have to wrap up a little bit here soon. Any closing comments, Ericka? Any question that hasn't been answered? Anything, Robin, that you can think of that you want to summarize?
I think that believers need to be active and involved in the arts, in politics, in science, in education at all levels, in the pharmaceutical companies for sure. Believers need to be involved in every level because we have to be there to make a stand for righteousness and for what's right. And so please join us in that.
Great. Greatly appreciate
Amen
you being on the show, Robin. This has been very, very good for me. I certainly enjoyed stepping in and having this conversation. And I think in a future episode, they might want to invite you back and do it the right way. But thank you so very much for being on the show. Greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you in Las Vegas.
Yes, sir. Well, I may see you in New Hampshire next week.
That's true.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Armstrong.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you too.
Is that our show for the week?
That is it. We got about 20 seconds before we close, sir.
Well, I hope you didn't miss Robert too much. We missed him. Check me out on Twitter at jtheshepherd1 and check out Ericka at
Ericka Redic.
So it was great being on the show. Hopefully you invite me back sometime.
Yes, absolutely, Jay. You did an awesome job hosting today. You know that I love you. Even if you sucked, I would have told you that you were awesome. So you can come back.
Makes me feel good.
You can come back anytime. All right, everybody. See you next week.
Hi, I'm Robert Chernin,
And I'm Ericka Redic.
and we are Of the People. Join us on WUVR 1490 on your AM dial. That's Thursdays 9 a.m., Saturdays 3 p.m., and
WNTK 99.7 FM.
if you can't find either of those, you can find us on